I know we have some people still joining, but it's already 12:15, and I know you have worked really hard to prepare for this. And so I want to make sure that we start us on time. Jagathi, any opening comments from you for the team, for the group?
I was going to say no, but then I always like these opportunities. So I think thank you for offering me that. I think I'm really excited. This is the first time we're trying this kind of deep dive over 3 sessions, and the caliber and the conversations we're having is just phenomenal. So I'm glad that Sindhu was able to, or is able to, join us today and take us into this next level of deep dive into a technology that is so fundamental and pretty much changing the landscape of financial services. So thank you both for preparing so hard for this one, and I look forward to hearing it.
Thank you, Jagathi. It is truly my pleasure to introduce Sindhu. She is someone who is already making a big mark in the AI space in the United States. So it's a privilege to have you, Sindhu. Thank you so much for joining us. Sindhu Joseph is the co-founder and CEO of CogniCor Technologies, which is a digital assistant platform used by leading financial services businesses and is truly transforming the customer engagement experience. She's based out of Palo Alto, California, so it's a morning there for her. And she drives CogniCor's vision to provide the thinking and talking face to every business that she works with. She holds a PhD in artificial intelligence, and she is the inventor of 6 patents to her name and is the author of several leading journals and publications in artificial intelligence. CogniCor, which was created out of her PhD, combines traditional inductive AI with advanced deductive AI and reasoning to offer a unique digital assistance platform for business teams in the financial services industry. She heads up a global team of 65 engineers and loves trekking, reading, and exploring the innate elegance of natural intelligence in her free time, as if she had free time. So with that, let us get started. And Sindhu, what I thought we could do first is talk just a little bit about this endeavor that you're in right now, which is CogniCor Technologies. Tell us a little bit about your journey there and a little bit about the company to set the stage.
Yeah, first of all, thanks Jagathi and Catalina for this forum and this opportunity. I'm truly honored to speak here. Although I have a really kind of a long background in AI, around 20 years of work in AI, I'm still this field is fast changing, and I have still a lot to learn, and really excited to continue to work in this field. So my own journey with AI started when I was pretty small, a child in the late 90s. And it was starting with how I was able to look at human intelligence, how we are displaying our own behavior, our own nuances in intelligent behavior. And I was very, very curious about it, how we are able to do that, and how we are differentiating from other animals and other living beings. And that, when during my graduate school, when I was introduced to a field called AI, which is looking at creating and designing this kind of intelligence in artificial systems, I was really drawn towards it, and wanted to explore that further in terms of how we could understand our own intelligent behavior by trying to create and design this kind of artificial systems. So that is my early journeys into artificial intelligence. And very fortunately for me, I'm trained as a software engineer before I did my PhD. And I was expecting to have a normal software engineering career, although my interest was always towards this kind of exploration. And fortunately for me, I started with a company where they hired me as the first kind of researcher when they were starting an artificial intelligence lab. And I got the opportunity to kind of deep dive from a really fresher point of view into this field. This is early 2000. We did not have the hype around AI, but still it was kind of my first exploration into deep AI algorithms and its benefits in how you can apply this to more of an industrial settings. So that was setting the stage for my PhD. And once I did my PhD from Europe, from one of the top AI institutes in Barcelona. It is I had the privilege of exploring a great place, as well as working with some of the great minds in AI. And from there, I went on to co-found CogniCor with my husband, in fact. And this was more from an, on one side, I really thought that, AI has some of the unique power to revolutionize the current industry, especially industries like financial services, telecom, and which are not kind of like, ready for embracing this kind of revolutionary technologies. Like if you look at Amazon, Uber, Netflix, those are kind of embracing technology, and you can see that you have a personalized, ubiquitous experience coming out of this kind of AI technologies behind the back. But if once you go into more traditional technologies like finance, telecom, you don't see that kind of experience. So that's where I thought there is a huge opportunity in revolutionizing that experience, and that's how CogniCor was born and launched. And so we launched in Europe, and then took it to the US market in 2018. So there is a long journey, around 5 years, when I really kind of deep dived into the world of business, where I had no prior experience. I only had a PhD in artificial intelligence and some technologies that I thought could be productized. So I took around 5 years of time to build this product and platform before launching into the market. I did multiple POCs, worked with the large enterprises, did a lot of learning, and when we launched in 2018, that was truly a powerful moment for me to understand how this could revolutionize the sector. So that's a little bit of my journey in building CogniCor.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's exactly what we were looking for this event, because we really wanted to have that perspective of what does it take to build an organization that delivers value to customers. You're coming from the technology side, from the artificial intelligence side, and really having to understand the business world. So that's very, very helpful. So let's dive right into it, if we may. And one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about was the typical use cases of AI, specifically in financial services. AI is still controversial in terms of whether it really is of value to companies and to organizations. And how do we make sure that it is bringing value that you can quantify, that you can actually point to? So talk to us a little bit from your perspective. How do you think about it when you're designing an AI solution, and what should people be considering when designing an AI solution?
This is pretty interesting in this context, especially because we have a huge hype around AI, which means that most enterprises are like, if you are in a conference room, within the next couple of minutes, AI would come up, and you are forced to do something around it, from the leadership to the kind of most ground level workers. So there is a lot of pressure, like AI can revolutionize a lot of things that has been traditionally handled. At the same time, there is a lot of challenges which most people don't understand. So we have gone from places where, like in our first meetings before it was so popular, like we used to have CEOs and COOs of the CIOs of large enterprises telling us, like almost imagining AI like a magic, like, you could do anything that is, can be imagined. So we have to bring them to the level of, like, what is pragmatic, what is realistic. So I think we have gone through that curve of disillusionment a little bit, having failed and having learned what is pragmatism in deploying AI. So we are in a much better place in terms of that. So from that aspect, I would talk about some of the typical use cases that we can deploy AI in, especially in the financial services. So I'll start with some of the security use cases in terms of, like, credit scoring, or in terms of exploring fraud in financial transactions, or even monitoring your finances. So those are some of the key use cases from a security point of view. And as I will elaborate later, security is one of the top use cases within finance that AI is being deployed. And this is very, very natural, because one of the key capabilities of AI is the ability to understand patterns. And when there is a pattern that is unique, that is not being seen before, or that is deviating from the expected behavior, within microseconds, AI can score through millions of data and pick up this information. So from that point of view, I think it is very natural that security is one of the top use cases. It is used in the financial services world. Credit scoring is another one, which while it is not as easy as fraud detection, so where, like, you have almost a 95% of accuracy, and you are not mainly penalizing anyone for that. But credit scoring is a balance where you are based on, for example, your past behavior. You are being assigned a particular credit. So you can have different aspects, like your spending, your payback history, all of those aspects, and then you are being assigned a credit. So here there could be a reason for bias, and we will talk a little more about it if you have questions around it. But still, this is a huge opportunity where we could, using different parameters, you could look at analyzing and putting a credit score for different profiles. Another key area that to a certain extent AI has found a lot of success is trading. So analyzing investments, high frequency algorithmic trading, predicting how a particular investment would perform, and managing your personal wealth. So all of these areas, and this is one of the areas that we work as well in, especially in the wealth management. We work very closely, not in this trading area, but in the domain of wealth management. So this is again one area. Here there was a huge amount of promise, one from the area of automated trading, and another from the area of robo-advisory. So after experimenting with a number of such tools, we have come to the conclusion that robo-advisory works to a certain extent for certain type of investment, having a low value, but may not be useful for experienced traders who wants to manage a huge amount of wealth. The same goes with algorithmic trading. It works in certain scenarios where you have the good thing about AI is that you can take very split-second decisions and analyze the difference between how the orders are being placed, and make use of that microseconds of time, and then outbid a competitor. So that kind of thing can be used, but again, the performance is more and more declining from a revenue generation standpoint. Where there is a lot of success has been on the personal banking side as well as process automation side. Process automation is one of the very key areas where AI is being deployed just behind security. I think if you have questions, we can go into more of these details, but I just wanted to highlight, chatbots, for example, Bank of America's Erica, as we all know, more than 100 million people are using it. So it has been a huge success from a engagement point of view. And behind the scenes, what is happening is RPA, robotic process automation, where there is a huge number of processes being automated. Like if you want to open a new bank account, or if you want to, apply for a credit card, there is in a couple of years' time, there is not going to be any person involved in that process. The entire process is going to be automated from front to back. So that is one real focus area for financial services. So I want to kind of move on because I'm given a topic which has so much of information that probably we can discuss for a few hours. So Catalina, feel free to kind of regulate it a little bit. Otherwise, I think I will spend the next couple of hours in talking about it.
Of course, no, thank you. No, and people will definitely have some time for questions, so people can talk about it. But yeah, my background is in wealth management, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And some people are very much adopting it. Others, prefer to work with human advisors. But anything that is repetitive, right? The transactional on the banking side, for sure. I see that trend already happening. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So this is this is kind of the ranking, if you will, to in terms of adoption, fraud and security is kind of one of the top adopted areas. Robo-advisor or chatbot. Robo-advisor is kind of declining, but chatbot and digital assistants are kind of increasing. Personalization, recommendation, robotic process automation. And my prediction is that robotic process automation would be one of the top areas as well. So those are, that's how it is ranked for now in terms of adoption. In terms of I also just wanted to talk a little bit about we hear a lot of talk about AI being deployed everywhere, but we also needs to be a little bit mindful in terms of where AI should not be used. And I just want to point out some of the areas where we should be very, very careful in terms of not using AI. One area is where corner cases are important. So I just wanted to, share a very, very simple example where, if you have a minority in terms of, race minority or females in a particular, any minority scenario where the data is not available enough as in the normal cases. So you have a normal population where there is a huge amount of data to kind of train the algorithms. And there are corner cases where all kinds of minority behavior is kind of described. So this kind of data, when given to an AI algorithm, it would tend towards the normal. So that is what is happening in, if you deploy this into hiring or for example, in social media tools like Instagram or Facebook, where they are scrutinizing certain type of races or behavior more closely than others, just because there is this kind of bias built, and that's because there is not enough data in certain type of scenarios, and that is a place where AI should be used very, very cautiously. Another place where AI should not be used is if you want to make decisions especially from an ethical or social perspective. If you want to make decisions, you cannot train an AI system and then pass on the burden to the AI system to make those decisions, because as much as we would like AI to be independent decision maker, the data that goes into AI hugely influences how AI is making decisions. So we are building those biases into those decisions, and we have no idea how these biases is built into the data. And the next 3 points, like AI farms, is one way this data is being created for AI to be learned. So that is kind of a distributed process, and we don't really check the backgrounds of these people who are annotating, and creating data for AI consumption. So as long as we don't do that, we have no idea what kind of biases are built into this kind of data. So that is so once AI is built like that and learned like that, one place we shouldn't put them is where you have this kind of value-laden judgment being placed on AI. The other technique that, one particular technique that should be very, very, we should be very careful in using is reinforcement learning. So I don't know if you are familiar with a AI bot that Microsoft launched in around 2015, 2016 timeframe called Thai. And within 24 hours, it was supposed to interact with Twitter users. And within 24 hours from being a really nice, polite, friendly bot, it went to become a Hitler supporter. So what really happened is it learned from user interactions. And within 24 hours, you had enough users who were, training this AI algorithm to behave in that manner. So this kind of learning, which is one specific technique within AI, that should be very, very carefully used. So how are the user behavior being learned by the AI system should be very, very carefully monitored. Then the other area is regulated applications, where you need full transparency in terms of, like, especially in the financial services, you need to explain why you have taken such decisions. And one part of AI is a complete black box, and you have no way of telling, how that should be, like, explained. So, in those areas, again, that should not be used. So these are, just some areas that, we should think a lot of times before deploying AI.
Agreed. Let me interrupt you for 1 second, Sindhu. One of our members, Ken, is having a question. He said, I recently read the Bolin study where tweets from Twitter and algorithms were used to predict the shape of the stock market with 73.3% accuracy. I was wondering if you were familiar with this study, but more importantly, what is your opinion on how accurate AI can be in something like trading?
So that's what I was talking about, high frequency algorithmic trading. So that is one area where you could really use AI algorithms. But in general, in the normal trading, it is pretty hard because, the data that we have is maybe for the past 100 years. There is not enough data, and there is such a lot of factors that goes into a particular behavior of stocks and trades and things like that. So it becomes really hard for AI algorithms to. You could probably predict the trends pretty accurately, but you cannot really allow it to make judgments because. For example, how a political situation influencing the trade, we really cannot predict that. So those things, so what kind of features are going into the AI decision making becomes very, very crucial. So I think from that point of view, robo advisors are not very effective is my opinion in general, but you could use them as one of your inputs, and as a human decision maker, you could go ahead and do that. The area where it has excelled is this very narrow area where you do a high frequent trading, like you buy it, sell it. So that high frequent trading is one area we have seen it has kind of excelled.
Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit. I know you're going to get into this next, but as you're thinking about solutions, you in your last slide you had at the bottom, AI is not the solution; it's a tool towards the solution. So when you're thinking about designing or putting something out to market, talk to us about the steps and the impact and the input around data, and how do you get to that? And also, how do you innovate? How do you make sure that you are out there and positioning yourself or your company or your product or your service in a competitive landscape?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to talk more details on that, because that is an area which is often misunderstood. How do we implement an AI solution? How do we go about designing it? So I start with, this is a great time to use and innovate using AI, because we have all the right elements in place for building an AI system. Like, we have open source free algorithms and free platforms that is, we are very quickly, even if we are not AI experts, we are very quickly able to experiment using these platforms. We have tons of data in many cases, not in all situations, but many cases we have a lot of data being collected, and we have the compute power. And the most interesting thing, we have the cloud architecture. We don't have to have our own infrastructure. So all of these factors, allow us to have the perfect AI solution to be built, at least from a theory standpoint. So when it comes to really designing AI solutions, one of the things that, if I'm a data scientist, or if I'm more of a, software engineer, or like someone who's in the digital teams of large enterprises, the approach that they tend to take is like, you have a problem, then you automatically think that, I can apply AI to this particular problem. And then, let me gather data and use a particular algorithm to train, evaluate, model, and that's pretty much what I need to do. So this is the approach most commonly taken in the industry to build and deploy AI solutions. As you can imagine, this is a completely wrong approach to building and designing AI solutions. So the right approach, and I also put the kind of approximate a percentage of time you have to spend in each of these areas, just to show you the importance of some of these steps. So first is the problem formulation. Like, really, do we need an AI solution for solving this particular problem? So for problem formulation, and this is this should not be automated. Like, this is where, like, human intuition, human analysis, strategic thinking needs to come in place. So we need to spend time on creating this problem statement. And once we know that there is a problem correctly formulated, and we have an AI solution that could potentially be in use, then we need to collect data. So in that that data collection to engineering the features, we spend around 80% of our time. So how do we collect the non-biased data that is representative of all kinds of cases? How do we transform this data from a raw data to a place where you can really process them, and, remove the noises, and convert them into kind of a features? Because what are the factors, features meaning what are the factors that are influencing a particular decision. So you can do that automatically by by using certain tools to pick out certain primary principal features that are affecting a particular decision. So you can, given a data, there are multiple tools in the industry that will tell you that these are the features that are principal to this decision making. So you can have that, but there should be a human in the loop in that process who is overseeing that, okay, and deciding that, okay, these features affect and those some other features don't should not be there in that particular mix to make decisions. So that part has to be iterative, like you have to really look and make sure that these features are evaluated correctly. Then you select a model and evaluate, predict, measure results, and then go back and iterate over this. So there are a number of tools in the industry that have platforms that does this entire process, that gives you some automation in some of the steps, and others are manual. And there are also tools in the industry where you can only do data cleaning and feature extraction, or you can only do modeling, or you can only do analyze and make results. So, so I'll be talking a little bit about that in the next slides. So here, the first part is data acquisition and labeling. So there are a number of platforms that are available. And it can be categorized into mainly three categories. One is like, you are using human in the loop to create data. So you have a crowdsourced platform where anyone can, sign up to it and, create data. And create data meaning annotate data. So if it's an image, you are marking certain areas, like, this is a car, this is a face. So you are like, taking millions of data and annotating it, and then giving it to the algorithm. So that data preparation is, all of these platforms are meant for that. There is this is rather new, the area of synthetic data creation, where you are not taking the existing data. So for example, for automated driving, you are not taking data that is generated already existing, but you are generating new data from a gaming kind of a platform. It's completely artificial world, and you are simulating certain experiences, and then you are creating data. So there you can kind of avoid certain biases. So it is an interesting field, but there are not many platforms that are available, or it's not as mature as possible as we would like to. But the farming of data or labeling of data is the most common thing that has been done. Feature engineering is another type of area where you are actually creating the features from the data that is available. So that there are tools and platforms that for that as well. So that is a very interesting area to explore as well. So if you have done this part well, I would say that you have kind of reached 80% success in building and deploying AI solutions. People most often focus on the model accuracy and prediction and all that, but I would say that this is the area where you need to have most focus.
Thank you, Sindhu. No, for me, as I was working with Sindhu, this was probably the most enlightening part of the conversation. I didn't know, obviously, what it took to do what you do. But what I'm also hearing is that it's constantly evolving and changing. And so just like, especially because of the innovation, so you have to stay on top of the platforms to make sure that you're bringing in exactly what it is that you're looking to achieve. We've got about 10 minutes. I know you want to open this up to questions. So there's a couple of questions on the chat. Let me go there, and then I'll have you wrap. I know there's a couple other things you want to share with us. But let me just share a couple of questions. Jagathi was asking data scientists I just lost Jagathi's note. Get excited about working with large numbers of data. As humans, we know that there is an optimal selection of data that must be analyzed. Analyzing every data point available can create a lot of noise. How is it being solved now? Or maybe what is the best way of solving this?
I again go back to my, slide on the data acquisition and labeling. So here, it is not analyzing the number of data points that makes it noisy. It is analyzing the, incorrect features that makes it particularly noisy. So, for example, I'm going back to this hiring process because that is one of the easily understood places where you can have this kind of bias. For example, if I'm hiring for a software engineer, I can look at the qualifications, the past experience, all of those things. I can also look at whether that person has studied from Stanford or MIT or from a local school. So this may not be relevant for making a decision. So if you include that as a feature, which school you have graduated from, you would have a particular outcome. And if you don't do that, if you don't include that, then you have a completely different outcome. So it is up to you to decide, what features needs to be selected for training the algorithm. What are the influencing factors that would get to the right kind of conclusions? Data, algorithms are existing which can extract this kind of features and tell you that these are the most influential features from past behavior. But we are the ones who are deciding, past behaviors, should it influence future decision making, or to what extent? Yes. So that is one part of the, I think question. The other part is how do you remove certain corner cases? If there is a huge amount of data for one particular feature, then you might want to remove certain noises from that data. So it could be corner cases, but all of this has to be done with a lot of analysis in the background, because if you remove corner cases, then you are again biasing the algorithm to making certain decisions. So sometimes, you create synthetic data just to make sure that you have balanced amount of data in all kinds of cases. So those techniques can be adopted.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Give us a little bit about, talk to us a little bit about the barriers to innovation in this space. What are they, and how do you categorize them in terms of importance?
While things looks really interesting and exciting from an AI adoption standpoint, there are, especially for massive large scale adoption, I think there are a huge number of factors that is blocking companies from adopting and rolling out AI deployments. So the first one is it is coming from the leadership itself. They are not recognizing AI could be one of the game changer in their industry, and there are still industries that is lagging behind. For example, insurance. They very recently got on the bandwagon of AI, claim processing. How do you sign up for a policy? So all of those things are still being worked out, and not really, AI is not fully being utilized there. The second is, and I think this would be the most common reason, is how do you identify the most appropriate business use case? So we all know that AI has to be deployed in the enterprise, but where do you start from? So there is not much awareness within the enterprises and decision makers, and also this is coming from the training background. All of these people are not trained on this kind of, do not have even the basic training on AI, which makes it really hard for them to understand, where, where this could be most useful. Finally, this also, comes to lack of skilled workers. So how do you, make decisions when you don't have that skilled workforce? And this is getting solved as we speak, but, there is still a huge lack here. And the other issues, I think I already talked about data quality and other issues, like when you deploy such a solution and the results that you are expecting may not match your expectations in terms of KPIs. That is mostly because of the, how prepared are you from a data standpoint, and how prepared are you from an infrastructure standpoint, and a regulation and security standpoint. So these things influence the results that are expected. Can I just charge?
You also talked to me when we were preparing for this a little bit about your experience working with enterprises as you've been deploying your own application, and that seemed to be a big factor in success or failure. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I didn't get your question.
The fact that you have been working with enterprises to deploy your own application, and depending on the companies that are implementing it, it could be very successful or it can be a failure, and sometimes a challenge to deploy some of this innovation. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
definitely. So that is one point that I did not mention here. So in every such enterprise, especially between an enterprise startup kind of engagement, behind every success, there is a champion from the enterprise who is kind of, making sure that, this deployment is going through with the right use case, with the right support, and talking to the leadership as well as the ground level implementation team. So that champion's role is very, very crucial. And we have seen that, as in day and night, the difference between having that champion and not having that champion. So it could really influence how the enterprises are adopting. And this is because many cases, like because of all of these data issues and things like that, the near-time ROI for an AI deployment may not be as visible as we all like it to be. And when we have a champion that who understands really the power of long-term ROI that could derive from this kind of deployments, they are able to influence both the upper management as well as the ground team. So that is one crucial reason why such deployments become a huge success as we work with them.
Or they don't get off the ground, they don't get adopted. So
exactly.
We've got a couple of minutes left. Let me open it to the group and see if there's another question that we can address. Is there anybody? I know there's one or two more on the chat that I can bring up, but is there anybody who has a live question they would like to ask? Just unmute your mics.
Catalina, I thought there were a couple of other questions on.
There are. I just wanted to give the group a chance to speak if they wanted to. So let me read one from Laura. How does AI, if at all, impact economic valuation services, such as the transfer pricing, meaning transfer pricing that helps multinational companies create value and advises on implications of party dealings on global taxes? Do you see AI improving these types of processes?
So I'm not very familiar with, at least on top of my mind, I'm not able to think of, how AI could be influential in those areas. Maybe that's a question that I could think about and then come back.
Okay, so that's on economic valuation services. And Laura, is that companies or large-scale transactional types of processes? Can you clarify?
That's multinational companies.
Multinational company valuation of multinational companies. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So, your question is more on how does the company's value go up based on their AI powers?
That's a good question. I was more leaning towards how can AI help this process, make it easier? But that is also helpful.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because the way companies are valued itself is a huge debate, and I think it's a controversial debate as well. And I don't know how far AI can help in that process.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, but it's subjective, right? And that's what makes it controversial, the value of certain parts of the companies. So, well, unfortunately, we could keep talking about this for a long time, but we've come to at the end of our time. Sindhu, if you don't mind just putting on your chat, maybe your email, so if people do have questions, we could continue this conversation. It is only the second of 3 of our parts of our series. And I want to, first of all, thank you for joining us. This has been, to me, fascinating. I learned more helping prepare for this session than I thought I ever would. But of course, you are an expert. So thank you for joining us. And I want to remind you all that our next and final session of this series on AI will be on November 4th, also Wednesday, same time. And this time we're going to bring you the perspective from the investor community, which should be very interesting, kind of pulling it all together as we think about what AI is and how to put together these solutions. At the end of the day, they have to be funded and they have to be supported by the investor community. So we will have that perspective. And in the meantime, thank you all very much for joining us. And I wish you a great rest of the day. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's terrific.